Hey friend, welcome to the new lesson in spoken Lithuanian. Today we're going to talk about 10 Lithuanian verbs that don't exist in English. Well, basically that don't exist in that particular form as a singular verb, as a singular action that you can do. Basically, you have to use more than one word to express the same thing in English, and I will show you today some very interesting examples of Lithuanian language. Usually what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding various prefixes or suffixes, or just simply particles to the existing verb, to the basic verb, and then we get various interesting verbs that are commonly used in Lithuanian language. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is going to be apsikabinti. Apsikabinti. Basically, kabinti, right? Kabinti in and of itself would be to hang, right? But you add particle C, you make it a reflexive one, and you add prefix up, and you get something like to hug each other mutually. Like both people are actively involved in the hug. So let me give you an example. So for example, jie seniai nesimatė, todėl jie stipriai apsikabino. Right? They hadn't seen each other for a long time, so they hugged each other strongly, right? Apsikabino. They both did the action of hugging each other. So that's a good example of a verb that you basically get by adding various prefixes and other parts to the existing verb, right? Very good example, very commonly used. Basically, in this lesson, I chose, all the ones that, because we have a lot of those in Lithuanian, but I chose the ones that are very common, like everyday language. Okay? Tinginiauti, right? Tinginiauti. So basically, tinginiauti means to deliberately do nothing, just to be lazy, and usually it's without guilt, because to be lazy usually in English language has that negative connotation to it, right? And tinginys, if you made it like tinginys, like as a noun, right, would be like basically a sloth, right? So that would mean like a negative thing. But tinginiauti usually just means like just hanging about, doing nothing, basically. So as example, be sekmadienį visą dieną tinginiavau namuose. So on Sunday I spent the whole day lazily doing nothing at home, basically, right? But as I said, without the guilt, without the negative connotation, it sort of is like a positive thing, tinginiauti, and once in a while you definitely have to do that, right? Now the next one is susimastyti. Susimastyti. Mastyti has this nasal A in the middle of it, right? So that's to suddenly fall into deep thought and become quiet or distant, right? So basically that would mean like to really get into the deep thought, like thinking about something, especially on some, like to ponder even, right? Ponder would be close, maybe I would say in translation. You could translate it to ponder, but I would say susimastyti is deeper, a bit deeper, right? So for example, jis staiga nutilo ir susimastė, right? So he suddenly went quiet and fell into deep thought, right? Like to fall into deep thought would be the best translation of susimastyti. Therefore, it is on this list because we simply don't have an English. If maybe you're native in English language, you know some sort of obscure words. So if at any point you find a word, right, that it's this and that in English language, just write me a comment, right? Shoot me a comment. Let everybody know. We have this English word, so that in this way I will learn something new. But I mean, I'm pretty good at English. I think, at least I think I do, and it should be a very obscure word, if I couldn't find it. So let's go to the next one. So prablaškyti or prasiblaškyti. So prablaškyti, that means to do it for someone else. Prasiblaškyti, that means to do it for yourself or ourselves. So it implies reflection. It's reflexive on yourself. So that means to clear your mind or distract yourself or someone in a positive way. That's the important word, in a positive way. So for example, jis nusprendė prasiblaškyti, tad išėjo pasivaikščioti, right? He decided to clear his mind, to distract himself, so he went for a walk. Like if you said to distract yourself, it usually means has that negative connotation in English language. Not always, of course, but it usually does. And in Lithuanian, that's a specific word, because if you said like to distract in a negative way, that would be išblaškyti. Išblaškyti, like use the prefix out, išblaškyti. So that would imply the negative version of distracting, right? You would say like, oh, tu išblaškei mane, you distracted me, right? But prablaškyti, especially prasiblaškyti, for reflexive, it means that just to go clear head somewhere in the woods, or anywhere, just to be peaceful for a little while. As I said, a very commonly used word, right? So the next one is going to be užsigalvoti, or the more common version is užsisvajoti. So that means to get lost in thoughts or to drift into daydream. And that's especially once again in reflexive form. Užsisvajoti, right? So you could say something like, autobuse taip užsisvajojau, kad praleidau savo stotelę. So I got so lost in daydream on the bus that I missed my stop. And we do this with one verb, right? I got lost in daydream. Užsisvajoti, right? Because svajoti means to dream, right? Not to dream as in during sleep, right? That would be sapnuoti. But svajoti, like to dream, to hope for a better future, right? Užsisvajoti means to just, to get lost in your thoughts and in daydream, in dreaming that you usually miss something or you usually do something bad because of it. So it sort of has this negative connotation, but it almost implies missing something because of that, right? Not noticing something because of that. Very, very, again, very common. Susigyventi. I love this one. So that means to emotionally adjust to something over time until it feels normal, right? So basically, that would mean, I would say the closest one would be to get used to, but we have a different word for to get used to in Lithuanian. Get used to means susitaikyti, could be get used to, or just simply, the most common one would be priprasti. Priprasti is to get used to. Susigyventi usually means, has that connotation of something being unpleasant initially, right? And then over time adjusting emotionally to it. That means susigyventi, right? So for example, you could say something like, iš pradžių buvo sunku, bet vėliau susigyvenau su pokyčiais, right? So at first it was hard, but later I adjusted and got used to the changes. So susigyvenau su. You use the preposition su, which is with. Susigyventi su, so to get used with something, basically you're saying, right? You use with for this one. So iš pradžių buvo sunku, bet vėliau susigyvenau su pokyčiais. At first it was hard, but later I adjusted and got used to the changes. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the next one is going to be numanyti. Numanyti. So that's to have a vague, intuitive sense about something, basically. So example would be, aš tik numaniau, kad kažkas negerai. So I just had a feeling that something was wrong. So to have a feeling, to have intuitive sense, usually a vague one, right? That what means numanyti, basically, right? You could say that to have a sense is a very close one, right? Just to have a sense, to have a feeling, to have an intuition, all of these combine into numanyti. Because manyti, without the prefix nu, basically means to think. Manyti, I think. You would say aš manau, I think. But numanyti has that, to think a little bit in advance, right? And numanyti, to just a little bit. You can even actually, sometimes you can say numatyti, because matyti means to see, right? But numatyti means to see a little bit in the future, sort of predict. You can use this one as well, also very common to use, right? Okay, so now the next one, let's open up the next one, is going to be įsijausti. Another very common one. That means to emotionally immerse yourself so deeply that you feel it. Well, that's a good way of putting it, I would say, but it basically means to just really immerse yourself into something, but emotionally, right? So I was a bit reluctant when I did this one because immerse is a very, very close verb, right? But I would say that immerse would probably mean įsitraukti. Traukti means to pull yourself into something. That would be closer to immerse. Įsijausti usually just implies emotional, because you can immerse yourself not necessarily emotionally, right? If I'm not mistaken, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but įsijausti usually implies just the emotion of it, right? So, for example, žiūrėdamas filmą visiškai įsijaučiau istoriją. While watching the movie, I completely immersed myself in the story. You see, even the translation, I am giving you immersed myself, but that's like got into, immersed in, and think of like emotional attachment more so than anything else, okay? So yeah, įsijausti. Užsibūti, a very common one in Lithuanian language. So to stay somewhere longer than you planned, right? So example would be, mes tik trumpam užėjome, bet užsibuvome kelias valandas. So we only stopped by for a bit, but we ended up staying for hours. Ended up staying for hours does not have negative implications, right? Maybe it's okay, we ended up staying there for hours. But užsibuvome usually has negative, because užsibūti means like you crossed someone's boundary and you did a little too much. Because you can use užsi with a lot of verbs. For example, you could say užsižaisti. That means to play for a bit with something for a bit long, right? And maybe even can be metaphorical, užsižaisti. So for example, you're doing some project and you're just tinkering small details, so you užsižaidei, right? It means overplayed a little bit with this. You just finish the project. So you can have a lot of things, a lot of verbs with užsi, right? But užsibūti is the most common one, right? Yeah, so mes tik trumpam užėjome, bet užsibuvome kelias valandas. We only stopped by for a bit, but we ended up staying for hours. I would say a very common and very close one would just be to say overstay. But the thing is, overstay is always negative, right? We overstayed our welcome, for example, right? But in Lithuanian, this one, like, bet užsibuvome kelias valandas, it requires a little bit more context, right? Maybe somebody wasn't happy that we stayed. Maybe somebody was. It's just sort of, it has that negative connotation, but it depends on how you present it in the sentence. I would say to say that overstayed could be a bit stronger again, right? So užsibūti, just a very, very common way to say it in Lithuanian language. And išsilikti, pasilikti, both of these are commonly used. And basically this is to really, 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 really miss, right? So to deeply miss someone after time apart, right? So that's a specific word for deeply missing somebody. That would be labai išsiilgau or pasiilgau savo šeimos. To be honest, pasilikti is more common one, the one with pa. So pasiilgau, right? I really missed my family. So that's basically it. That's how you say it. I really missed. You have pasiilgau, išsiilgau. Both of those are used. Pasiilgau is more common. Išsiilgau is a bit stronger than pasiilgau, right? Because just pasilikti basically means to miss. Išsilikti has that stronger, aspect to it. But both of these are used. Both of those imply really, really strong missing of someone. Okay, of someone or something, not necessarily someone. Okay. Yeah, so these are the 10 verbs. I mean, I have a plan to make more videos like these, with various everyday words of Lithuanian language that may not necessarily have a direct translation. They translate into phrases or various, combinations of words. Let me know if these lessons are interesting or not. It would be really interesting to find that out from you. So let me know that in the comments. If you want more phrases, if you want more words and you haven't downloaded yet, I have a free PDF and audiobook. You can find it in the description and in the pinned comment. Just click on it, download it. It's my free gift to you. Yeah, I hope it was interesting, this lesson, and useful, and I will see you in future one.